Hey everybody, Mike WX0MIK here, and today let's talk starter HF antennas. These are the big ones. So there are many different designs for HF antennas, and when I mean many, I mean there's an entire set of books. I have one book that's this thick talking about antennas, and majority of them are going to be talking about is HF. There are many designs, there are many theories. But let's talk about some of the most simplest ones to do, because we're talking about beginning HF. We're not talking about crazy HF. But in some cases, you might need crazy HF antennas to work within the area that you have. But we'll talk about those last, or another video if I can't get it all into here. So your most basic, simplest antenna is a dipole antenna, and a variation of that is I always want to call it a flag antenna. It's not a flag. It's a fan dipole. So you have dipole, fan, dipole. Work exactly the same way. You have something in the center, that's where your coax feeds off of. Then you have a leg going both ways. It's a half wave antenna, so you got a quarter wave sticking out this way and a quarter wave this way. Sorry, I have some beef jerky here, so I'm also cleaning my teeth. A fan dipole, the only difference is that you're adding multiple bands onto that same center connector. That's what I have now at home with 160 meters, 80 meters, 10 meters, and 6 meters. Those are the 10 and 6 is something that wasn't covered in another antenna I will talk about in a second. So that gives us resonant access typically across the entire band. The only place where you may have problems with that is on 80 meters. That's special. That we'll talk about that in another video. So there's dipole calculators out there, very easy to do. The only thing different with the fan dipole is sometimes they counteract with each other a little bit. So you might have to cut them a little bit shorter, or potentially even a little bit longer, in order to make sure that everything is resonant and stays resonant. Resonant. It sounds like I'm saying resident. But so that's your simplest antenna. From there, I'm going to give you two other variations that are multiband. One is an off-center fed dipole. So off-center fed dipole takes some of the I'm blanking on terminology right now. Basically, it allows you to use multiple bands on there. So a 40 meter off-center fed dipole is the same length as a 40 meter dipole. So you're not like saving space, but it also works on 20, I think 15 and 10. So that gives you 4 bands on the same space as a dipole. Now, how does that work? Boy, my math is going to be off on this, so don't forgive me. I think you're like 1/3 short, and then the other 2/3 of the length are on the other side. That gives you kind of a different feed point, but it does give you resonant antennas on 40, 20, 15, and 10. There, you can probably go to 80, and I don't know how that will play out with all the different points. I would imagine 40 and 20 at least, but I have not researched that part of it myself. But I'm just kind of introducing you to antennas here more than anything. By the way, a dipole is usually a single band unless you make a fan dipole. Then it's multi-banded for whatever you have added on for legs. Let's talk about my favorite antenna, although I don't use as much as I should, my end-fed half-wave antenna. That is my first antenna. That is what I went with first because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be locked in on 20 meters. I didn't want to be locked in on 40 meters. I wanted something I could do, kind of just pick and choose what I wanted. Now there's two variations I know for sure of, and there's a whole bunch more beyond that. You just gotta start Googling them. So end-fed half-wave, or EFHW, end-fed half-wave, has different types of transformers at the end. Technically, it's unin or whatever, but it's a transformer. You're transforming 50 ohms into whatever that is on at the feed point there. Sorry, I don't remember all those numbers off the top of my head again. But I have an 80 meter variation, so I have 132-ish feet off of that box out across my yard, and that gives me from 10 meters all the way up to 80 meters. Now, I made my own, which means there probably is something I did not do quite right, and which is why 10 meters is a little wonky. I can never get to stay tuned properly. And on 80 meters on the opposite side, and this is across any of them that you make like this, you usually only get down to the lower portion of the 80 meter band, meaning the CW FT8 type range. That's where it works best. If you want to get into the voice and stuff, you can usually force it through a tuner. But if you really want resonant, and that's what I did, I put up an 80 meter dipole, especially when I became a net control with OMS. But there's also 40 meter variation. Okay, so I didn't tell you, 80 meter variation pretty much is every band. 80, 40, 30 you can tune, 20, 17, 15, 12, and 10. Basically, all of them from 10 up to 80, with the exception of 60. And some of those you can use an internal tuner. Typically, you have to use the tuner in your radio, like a 3-to-1 typically is enough. Just touch it up just a little bit, because some of them are going to be like 2-to-1. Others are going to be sitting down at fairly resonant. So that is the 80 meter variation. There's also a 40 meter variation, which gives you 40, 20, 15, and 10. So it doesn't give you the work bands of 12 and 17. But also works very well for POTA, because it's only 67 feet long, so it is not a massive antenna that you have to hang up in trees at a park or however you put up your antennas. It's fairly easy to put up and manage on a regular basis. Plus, it's only 67 feet, so it should fit most people's properties if they own actual property with a house. Or you can figure out a way to put it somewhere. So that is another common type of antenna that is resonant. I am a big proponent for resonant antennas because I have had really good success with them over the years, and I've had very poor performance with some of the other styles, like random wire or things like that you really are relying on the tuner to make happen. I've just not had much luck with those, especially doing POTA, things like that. But those are some good starting points. There are hundreds of styles more, and we'll cover that in another video.